Thanks, Thomas. I'd like to just begin by offering my thanks to the Phoenix Historical Society for inviting me to speak here today. It's truly a humbling honour to be asked to say a few words in memory of such a Cork icon as Tomás MacCurtain. I have a few words prepared, and I hope to God I do the man justice, because we all know that he deserves the best. Now, I can trace the origins of my interest in Irish history and Republican beliefs back to my school days, when I first learned of men such as Tomás MacCurtain and Terence McSweeney, and I was enthralled to learn that men from my own city were at the heart of the battle to free our country. And in reading of the exploits of MacCurtain, I was struck at how accomplished and principled the man was. No matter the field, it seemed he excelled at every level, and each endeavour earned him the respect of his peers and his colleagues. And this is true when we consider that not only was Tomás MacCurtain a soldier of great competency, but he was also a skilled politician, a successful businessman, and a cultured Gaelic scholar. And his leadership skills were quite evident, and were called upon on many occasions in the discharging of his duties as the leader of the IRA in Cork City during the Tan War. And subsequent to the 1920 local elections and the majority afforded to Sinn Féin right across the country, MacCurtain's council peers elected him the first Republican Lord Mayor of Cork City. And this is a position he accepted with great honour and enormous pride. He carried out his duties as first citizen of Cork City with zeal, fully aware of the dangers that he faced. I've been long fascinated by men like how men like Tomás MacCurtain, indeed all volunteers throughout the ages, have gone about their duties with an apparent contempt for their own safety. And in the past they might have attributed this to a sort of cavalier streak that seemed to be a prerequisite in order to fulfil the criteria of a freedom fighter. But this, of course, is not the case. Men who gave themselves to the cause of Irish freedom were committed to an idea that was much more than the sum of all their parts and actions. And in my spare time I read an awful lot of books, and over the years I've read about men like Nelson Mandela and Dr. Martin Luther King and our own Bobby Sands. And in each case I was struck by the dedication each had in a cause, by their devotion to a set of principles. And this devotion allowed them to reach a level of serenity. They achieved a clarity of thought and realised peace of mind. It allowed them to rise above any injustices or threats they may have faced, and permitted them to act in open defiance of those that sought to persecute them. In researching Tomás MacCurtain, I discovered these very same characteristics. He had an unwavering commitment to ideals that were so much bigger than himself, and an allegiance to principles that would always eclipse the worst of his oppressors' dangerous excesses. Now, these men possessed the courage of their convictions, which let them rise above any fears they may have harboured, to see beyond the apparent dangers they may have faced, and permitted them to gaze with longing eyes at the promised land of freedom and equality, safe in the knowledge that their sacrifice brought the next generation closer to the same. Tomás MacCurtain and countless other volunteers from this proud county of ours did not show contempt for the danger they faced. They embraced it and accepted it, allowing it to motivate them, safe in the knowledge that their memories will be remembered through the adherence to the same principles by those that came after them. In Cork, we must remember the sacrifice of men like McSweeney, Sprigg, the Delaney brothers, Ahern and Crowley, among countless others who died in the name of Ireland, and with the ideals of MacCurtain warming their hearts. And when we remember the murder of Tomás MacCurtain, we must acknowledge the cowardice of the act. The assassination of the Lord Mayor of Cork was greeted with outrage right across the globe, and the blame lies squarely at the British Empire. However, in order that we learn from his murder, we must scrutinise the rationale behind the murder. And the reasons given are that it was a retaliatory act in response to the killing of an RIC man. But I disagree. I argue the murder of Tomás MacCurtain was an attack on the ideals cried out from the steps of the GPO in 1916. Tomás MacCurtain was the embodiment of republicanism in Cork, and his death exemplified the warped logic of the British Crown forces in their attempts to stifle the push for independence. The killing highlighted the complete ignorance of the principles that men like MacCurtain lived and died for. This ignorance fueled the fear of the change that the Irish people demanded. The British believed assassinating the leader of the IRA in Cork would extinguish the flame of the Republican movement. And herein lies the ignorance they have and had of republicanism. For no sooner had Tomás MacCurtain been laid to rest than Terence McSweeney took up the mantle, only for himself to perish at the hands of the Empire not long after. And this logic dictates that the ideals of republicanism are bigger and more powerful than any one individual and will live on regardless of the deaths of adherents and pupils. Now indeed, in the current political arena we find ourselves in, we, as the modern incarnation of those who fought and died for the Irish freedom, can identify among other political parties in this country a complete ignorance of the principles that we stand for. This ignorance drives contempt for the social and economic policies that Sinn Féin promotes. When we condemn austerity and stand shoulder to shoulder with the ordinary citizens of this country, they label us as populists. When we refuse to back policies that are to the detriment of our society, they call us irresponsible. When Sinn Féin refuses to join the cosy consensus at local and national level, they mark us out as troublemakers. And I say let them label us what they will, for they are driven by an ignorance of what we are and what we stand for. We are with the people because we are of the people. We feel the pain of austerity, the bite of the cutbacks, the hardship of unemployment and the sorrow of immigration. We stand shoulder to shoulder with the people because we feel the very same hurt they do as a result of the policies of the established parties. They cannot comprehend why our TDs take only the average industrial wage, or why our councillors refuse to take the fees for attending conferences and pay for it out of their own pockets. They can't understand us, quite simply because we threaten the very status quo that they sustain. These people fail to recognise that when we, Irish Republicans, look in the mirror, we see over 6 million faces from each corner of this island and of all races, religions and creed looking back. When they look in the mirror, they see only themselves. The struggle of MacCurtain and his ilk continues to this day, and the link remains strong as ever. And what binds the men of 16 to those of the 50s, through up to the 80s and up to the modern day, is not actions but ideals. The contents of the 1916 proclamation still serves as the guiding force for all of our efforts. We still clamour for the unification of this island, but we will not be satisfied with just the United Ireland, as our aspirations have grown. We now demand a new Republic of Ireland. It is incumbent on all of us here to take the sacrifice of Tomás MacCurtain and the volunteers of past to heart, with the knowledge that the principles that motivated them are the very same that motivate us today. Now, Cara, to conclude, let us all leave here today reinvigorated in our efforts to reunite our country, committed to reforming our politics and dedicated to republicanising our people. And the greatest honour we can bestow on those who gave their lives in the name of Irish independence deserves no less, and should serve as the greatest motivating factor as we work together on and into the future. Go Rev Mahagut. Thank you very much.